throughout NBA history, certain players have gotten more attention they deserve, while other players have not gotten as much attention as they deserve. This is what we call overrated, underrated. Now, while many players like Carmelo Anthony fall under that overrated column, some players like Michael Jordan fall under that perfectly rated column. In my opinion, there are some players that just go under the radar for one reason or another. And today, I'm going to be shedding light on one of those players, and his name is David Robinson. Now, throughout the 1990s, people try to diminish what all-time greats did in the 90s simply because they never got a ring, or if they did get a ring, it was probably when MJ was retired for not playing in the league. And this is fairly true. However, this really takes away from some of the great players in the league, especially players like Hakeem Olajuwon and Patrick Ewing. However, there is one player that is so underrated, in my opinion, that he could be considered one of the best players in NBA history, one of the best centers in NBA history, who is an NBA champion, an MVP, led the league in defensive rating like 4 times, is a scoring champion, is a rebounding champion, is a blocks champion. And that player is David Robinson. Okay. Usually when the word underrated gets thrown around, there's players like Mike Conley, Damian Lillard that usually get too much attention when it comes to underrated. And does that mean that people know how good players like Mike Conley and Damian Lillard are? Or were those players never good, and then people stopped calling them underrated? Did they realize that they weren't good? That's something to ask yourself. However, David Robinson is so underrated. People just never talk about him, and he's so good. Alright. He was drafted by the Spurs. He had to sit out 2 years because he was in the Army, I think, and he couldn't play. Navy. But in his second year, he put up unanimous MVP numbers in his second year. Alright? Let's put it all in context for you. 25 points. Pretty good. 13 rebounds. Pretty good. Something like 4 blocks. Pretty good. 4 blocks, 13 rebounds, and 25 points. In your second year in the league, with like a steal and a half, a high offensive and defensive rating. I think he had an offensive rating of 119, which is really good. He had a value over possession, value over replacement of 8, which is extraordinarily good. And you're probably sitting there saying, oh, well, the team probably slumped. They were probably tanking, so it doesn't matter. Nope, they went 55 and 27. Not to mention that he also had a field goal percentage of something like 55%. That is out of worldly, and that's in his second year in the league. That's usually double what regular NBA players would have in their best season of their career. And if that's not enough to you, yes, well, he did have players in that 1990-1991 season, players such as Rod Strickland, Sean Elliott, Terry Cummings, and he did have Larry Brown as coach. Would that team have even been in the playoffs if it wasn't for David Robinson? I'm not sitting here making the argument that, oh, David Robinson deserved MVP. I'm just saying that was an amazing year. That was insane. So I'm going to skip the 1993-1994 when MJ's out of the league. So a lot of players wanted to take advantage of this and win NBA championships. This was a year where David Robinson, again impressed, led the league in scoring with 30 points, had 10 rebounds, shot 50%, had like 2 blocks. It's like he never disappoints. He always shows up. There's not a year where I don't think he's disappointing. Alright? He made the All-Star game like the only years in David Robinson's career where he did not make the All-Star game when healthy were the last 2 years of his career. That tells you something about longevity. That tells you something. Anyway, fast forwarding to the 1994-95 season. David Robinson, one of the best MVP years in NBA history. This was insane this year. This year was insane. This year was so insane. Man. You look at that guy. He had something like 3 blocks, 27 points, 12 rebounds on amazing shooting splits. He led his team to the Western Conference Finals, where I do know some people think he choked against Hakeem. So he obviously gets discredited for that. But that was an amazing year, especially because he still doesn't have talent around him. It's insane how good of a player David Robinson is. And he again did not disappoint in 95-96, coming second in MVP voting. These are insane numbers. Throughout his career, 1 year he averaged 4.5 blocks. 1 year he averaged 30 points. 1 year he averaged 13 rebounds. He was an amazing passing center. He revolutionized the game. He was amazing. When it comes to all-time greats, they usually have accolades, so I'm going to talk about that too. Now, I talked about this in the beginning of the video. He is a NBA champion. He is a NBA MVP. He won Defensive Player of the Year. He led the league in scoring 1 year, that year where he was second in MVP voting. Out there's nothing that he really didn't do. He made many all-defensive first teams, many all-NBA teams, many all-star games. You're trying to sit there trying to diminish what he does just because he didn't win a title before Tim Duncan comes. And I'm going to talk about that. Another year where Jordan's out of the league. Many people want to take advantage of this. And guess what? David Robinson took advantage of it. And Tim Duncan. The thing when it comes to David Robinson is at the age of something like 30, 31, he gets injured for basically the entire season. The team's the worst team in the NBA. That shows you something about value, by the way. They get Tim Duncan, and when he's finally paired with another star, regardless of whether it's his 12th year in the league, second year in prime, he gets paired with another star, and almost immediately, even though Tim Duncan's only something like 21, 22, wins an NBA championship. 2-time champion, MVP. There are many things about David Robinson that he just checks off. There are some years where he averaged something like 3 blocks, 25-plus points, 10-plus rebounds on 50-plus% shooting. Those are MVP numbers. He put up MVP numbers since his rookie year.